Welcome to the show. It's Monday. Hope you managed to salvage some kind of good feeling out of the weekend. Vince and I, short on sleep. Here we are, baby. We are rocking and rolling. We are ready to go. We're here to chew some bubble gum and talk some football. And, baby, we're all out of bubble gum today. So we're all about ball. We've got a short show today as well because there are two Monday Night Football games tonight. The early game is the Houston, Texas, and Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the pregame show will start at 6 o'clock here on Sports Radio WSBT. So we are sprinting through this first hour, and we're going to talk a lot about Notre Dame's defense. You can rest assured with that. Chargers-Raiders is the late cap, and that starts at 10. Honestly, I wish that was the first game, but I realize West and all that kind of stuff. But in any case, Notre Dame football is the topic. Vince was up all night doing a little post-game show the other night after the 41-40 loss to Texas A&M. Notre Dame gave up 488 yards of total offense, Vince. 488, including 360 passing yards. When was the last time you saw an Irish defense look that bad?
It's been a while, probably 2016. At the beginning of 2016. And, I mean, this defense has been awful. And when was the last time they gave up over 200 yards to a wide receiver? One wide receiver.
I know.
So, I mean,
it's just like I was having shades. I don't know if you remember this game. You were probably sitting next to me in the press box for this game. 2006, Notre Dame, Michigan, the Mario Manningham game.
Oh, wow.
I think he only had like 4 catches. 3 of them went for touchdowns. He was well over 100 yards in that game. This was even worse because 200 yards and an 86-yard touchdown for Mario Craver.
Where multiple Notre Dame defenders had an opportunity to tackle him with or push him out of bounds. Like
something.
Like there's so many options come to mind.
I know
on that particular play, and none of them took place.
Here's the killer, Vince. I essentially watched the same game 2 days in a row, but the difference in the outcome was an interception that Russell Wilson threw and the Cowboys having a Notre Dame soccer player for a kicker who could probably kick it in from his own 40-yard line if they asked him to, the way Brandon Aubrey kicks. But, everyone was writing Russell Wilson's obituary after his season opener last week, and he just comes out and shreds the Dallas secondary. Everything he chucked up seemed like it was going for a touchdown. And it was a lot of the same stuff. Dallas is playing zone. Dallas is playing man. It doesn't matter what they were playing. Giants receivers were just killing him. And it turns into this shootout. And it was, again, it was almost a carbon copy of Notre Dame, Texas A&M the night before. And it was like, I just feel like we're at BVG PTSD is where we're at.
Oh, yeah.
Right now.
Oh yeah, it's like last week or the first game, people started bringing up Van Gorder, and it's like, okay, everybody needs to take a breath.
Maybe a little bit dramatic.
Like, come on now. And then we watched game 2, and it's like, well, I can't really tell people to stop doing that now.
Yes.
The major difference, though, and Brian pointed this out on the post-game show. The major difference is Brian Van Gorder was in year 3.
Exactly.
When he got fired, not game 2.
Well, he was in year 3, but the warning signs were there.
Early. 100%. No, absolutely 100%. I'm just saying he got let go in year 3.
Right.
After multiple years of not good defense. I'm praying that's obviously not the case for Notre Dame because I can't deal with this for 2 more years.
Yeah, and that's like, I'm kind of kidding saying BVG PTSD, but at the same time, it's like it's really not even PTSD because like we see the warning signs because there were warning signs in year 1, the Northwestern game, when things, when the levee broke and it like the rain was coming and the levee broke and then by 2016, but there were warning signs for the first 2 years. but Brian Kelly rode it out. He stayed the
Sure.
course. He stuck with his friend and all that kind of stuff. And like we've been here and we've seen the warning signs. Marcus Freeman hasn't seen. This is like he's experienced a lot of firsts in his 3+ years as head coach. This is the first real like slap in the face that I think that he's gotten from a hire that he's made like this, because it has looked bad. It was bad enough in game 1. It got way worse in game number 2.
I mean, yeah, it was awful in game number 2. I mean, both of these games, they had an opportunity where the offense went down and either tied the game and then gave the ball and asked the defense to make a stop, or went up by 6 points and asked the defense to make a stop. Neither time did it happen.
Yeah.
And that's just at the end of the game. You know what I mean? Like everything that went wrong up to that point, one stop is all you needed, and you still couldn't get it done,
including 4th and 11. Now we can talk about the takedown that would have made Loudon Swain, proud, that the Texas A&M offensive lineman had on Donovan Heinisch, but it wasn't called. I get it should have been called. It wasn't. It would have been 4th and even longer. But the way that game was going, like with everything just seemingly bouncing Texas A&M's way, it felt like they probably would have found a way no matter what. But 4th and 11, like you gotta come up with the stop there. You just do, like you're at home.
I agree. I mean,
like
Drake Bowen got boxed out by a big body tight end, and the kid made a good play in the end zone, obviously. Notre Dame wasn't going to get a sack there, but they would have at least put pressure and probably forced an errant throw. You know what I mean? But it shouldn't come down to that. I mean, let's be honest. It shouldn't have come down to that. Yeah. Notre Dame shouldn't have held on the previous third down, 3rd and 16 or whatever it was. Shouldn't have held there. That's a bad move. There's so many things that you can talk about in a negative way about this defense, and it shouldn't have come down to 4th and 11, but you still even had a chance at 4th and 11 on basically the final play of the game, and you couldn't make a play.
Yeah. 488 total yards of offense, 360 passing yards by A&M. Just the second time Notre Dame's ever scored at least 40 in a game and lost. Again, the only other time they had lost, a Brian Van Gorder defense in that overtime loss to Northwestern back in 2014. Notre Dame had 429 yards of total offense themselves Saturday night. And the last time they had more than 400 yards of offense in a game and lost was the Fiesta Bowl against Oklahoma State in Marcus Freeman's interim night as head coach.
I mean, 40 points should have been enough, period. I mean, Notre Dame scored in 6 different
possessions. Absolutely should have been enough, but obviously, we can talk about the
offense.
Extra point, extra point that they should have had.
Sure, but do you have any faith in the defense that they would have stopped Texas A&M in overtime?
No, that's the problem.
So, to me, the Tyler Buckner thing, you got to make that play in that moment, 100%, no question. But at the end of the day, that's not what lost them that game. Like, what lost them that game was a 13-play, 74-yard drive in 2 minutes and 28 seconds.
Right.
That's what lost you the game.
Right.
So stop piling on Tyler Buckner, because there's plenty of mistakes to go around. He's not the primary reason that Notre Dame lost this game.
No, and I'm not blaming Tyler Buckner.
Oh, I know you're not. I'm speaking to the people. I'm speaking to the people, Sean.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people out there that want his hide.
Oh, I know.
Because they didn't like him in the first place,
Right.
So.
Right. By the way, by comparison, like talked about Al Golden having in a breaking in period and, some of those different things. But the only time that an Al Golden defense in his 3 years at Notre Dame allowed 488 total yards and 360 plus passing yards in a game was the USC game last year, 557 and 360 on the nose. That was the only 300-yard passing game that Golden's defense allowed last year. Not even the national championship game, none of the playoff games. They gave up 300 passing yards. And so that USC game last year, the national championship game, and then USC back in 2022, the only 3 games Golden's defense gave up more than 400 total yards of offense. And so game 2 under Chris Ash, 488, almost 500 yards of total offense. And the 41 points that they gave up Saturday night is only 2 more points than Golden's defense gave up in the first 4 games combined last year.
God, that's so bad.
Like, you can keep going. You can keep going. Vince, I know you weren't a Lost watcher, but, like, after the plane crashes in the first episode, they're all out on the beach and, everyone's, crazy and all these different weird things are going on and stuff like that. That the end of the first episode of Lost, Charlie, one of the main characters, like they zoomed to him and he goes, "Guys, where are we?" And that's what I felt like watching that game Saturday night. What am I watching out here specifically defensively? Where am I? What is this that I'm seeing? Because it is not the Notre Dame defense we've become accustomed to seeing. We do have a lot of questions stacked up in the YouTube chat, and we'll get to them as soon as we can. I do want to start with this cut because Chris Ash said all offseason he wasn't running his defense. He's running the Notre Dame defense. But the defense that we have seen in these first 2 games looks nothing like what we've become accustomed to seeing over the past few years with Al Golden as defensive coordinator. So I asked Marcus Freeman at the press conference today, whose defense is this?
The Notre Dame defense that I hear you say look different. It's the execution of what they're being asked to do, right? The overall output, I guess, is what you see that's different. It's not the structure of the defense. It's the execution of what we're asking our guys to do. And so there's new players, right? There's some new players that we gotta get them to the point that they can execute what we're asking them to do. But it's not. I don't think you're seeing a big change in terms of the structure of the tactical aspect of how we're playing defense. And so what we got to do is again evaluate what we're asking our guys to do, and then say, okay, if they can't do what we're asking to do, either we got to change it or we got to address it in practice in a way that they can execute exactly what we're asking them to do at the level we're asking them to do it. And so that's what we got to do. And whose defense is our defense? It's our Notre Dame football. It's my head coach, right? That's no one person's fault. It's ours.
All right, Vince, what do you think?
I mean, he's trying to say that it's his fault, which, okay, as the head coach, I appreciate that. But it's bigger than that. But he also blamed the players that they're not executing.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, he keeps coming back to the execution, and I get it, like, he never wants to stand up there and throw somebody under the bus, but we heard the word execution I don't know how many times in the press conference today. I'd have to go back and look at the transcript.
Oh, it was a lot.
Tomorrow we heard that, we heard it after the game Saturday night. And so if you're saying it's execution, you're saying, well, it's not on the coaches, it's on the players, without, coming out and outright saying it. But that's what you're saying when you keep going back to the execution thing, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, I don't think the coaches are executing the way that they need to execute, as in what schemes and plays and all of those different things. Don't blame it on the players, because the vast majority of the players that are played last year, and they played at a very, very high level. And so I don't like the execution argument. I don't like it, because it's not like there's a bunch of new guys out there. I saw somebody saying, oh, well, they don't have Benjamin Morrison anymore. What? They had Benjamin Morrison the majority of the season last year.
Yeah.
So there's just a lot of misinformation, in my opinion. Yeah, they're missing some guys from last year. Yeah, Xavier Watts, really good player. No doubt about it. Jack Kaiser, really good player.
But Xavier Watts wasn't going to be the complete eraser. He wasn't going to erase everything. At the end of the day, you still have 3 guys starting in the secondary, including one who's a preseason All-American. After playing most of last season as a freshman, you have 3 guys who started in the national championship game and who started every college football playoff game for you last year in the secondary. We shouldn't be seeing the kind of breakdowns that we're seeing in the secondary. Those guys didn't just forget how to play football overnight. They didn't forget how to cover a receiver overnight when they were covering them all season long last year. That's just, so like to what he was saying, he was talking about the structure. I get what he's saying. It's like, okay, the playbook, like those plays, those defenses might have technically been in the playbook last year. So maybe you haven't technically added anything, but you've drastically swung the scales in terms of the kind of defense that you are trying to run, the way you want the operation to look in comparison to what it looked like last year.
Yeah, completely agree. They've taken the fight out of these guys as far as I'm concerned with the way that they're calling the defense and the way that they're asking the defense to play. It's not the same. And you can say it's the Notre Dame defense all you want. Well, then it's a failure. Notre Dame's defense is now a failed defense. So something's different. We can all look at it and we can all see whether you know anything about football or you don't, or you do, excuse me. You can see that there's something wrong. And so that needs to be fixed, whether it's the guy calling the plays, whether it's the philosophy from the head coach down, whatever it is, it needs to be fixed. And it needs to be fixed, yesterday. So hopefully we're not the only ones that see it. That's the problem.
Marcus Freeman has to see it. I think he sees it.
There's things that I was hoping that he would have seen on the offensive line that he claims he hasn't seen. So I don't know. I just... That's the part that I think worries me the most. Look, coaches make bad hires. It's how you respond to it.
It's how you respond and how quickly you realize
Correct.
it. And look, 2 head coaches got fired this weekend. We are 3 weeks into the season now. 2 head coaches got fired. And,
who got fired?
Again, the UCLA head coach, the Virginia Tech head coach. Yeah. They both come on, Vince.
Hey, man.
Climb out of your rock. Climb out of your hole over there.
I
know you were recovering from that late night post game yesterday. Again, the red flags are glaring if you want to compare this to Brian Van Gorder, which I think is a very fair comparison right now. It is more than fair. And it's why I asked the question, whose defense is this? Are you, one, because that's what I think a lot of people wanted to know, including myself, because again, when we watch what's going on the field, I ran through all those numbers. Al Golden only gave up as many yards as they gave up Saturday night once in his whole time. And that was to USC. And, so I know, like people are talking about, well, can you run the table? Can you still make the playoffs at 10-2 and all those different kind of things? Look, the last I checked, USC and Maeva, he's out there slinging the ball around. I think he's top 10 in the nation right now in terms of passing yards. And, the NC State quarterback is pretty good himself. Any decent quarterback with a couple of receivers, you're probably going to have to score 45 points to win a game right now if the defense keeps playing the way it is for Notre Dame.
I said this in the post game. Take the over in every game moving forward. Take the over because it's going to be a shootout every single game, unless something changes. And, everybody's, we need to play man. They are playing man. First of all, they're just not playing an aggressive form of man, right? They were playing man when Leonard Moore got the interception, and they were playing press man. Amazing what happens when you do what they're good at. And everybody's bagging on Christian Gray. Christian Gray hasn't played well, but he's also not being put in position to play well because he is not an off-man corner.
Yeah.
That's not what he's good at. He will never be good at it. He's just not. And so when you ask him to do something, I guess to Marcus Freeman's point, when you ask a player to execute something that they're not good at and they don't execute it, that's a coaching problem. You need to coach it better. Well, no, you need to put him in a better position. You don't, he's just not good at that. So why are you making him do it? That's the biggest question. And Carson Hobbs didn't have a good game either. Hasn't had a good 2 games. Devontae Smith is hurt.
Yeah.
So
there's not much you can do there.
Yeah.
Like
he had, I will, Carson Hobbs has somehow dodged the bullet of blame, and he's been real rough. But again, he's a backup being asked to play minutes he's never played before.
Yeah. Well, I think when we found out that that Devontae Smith was injured, again, there's not much you can do. Somebody's got to get out there. Somebody's got to try to do it. And, so he was forced into that situation. We got to take a break because we do still have breaks that we have to take in this hour that we are on the air. So we'll do that. When we come back, we'll hear from Freeman. Does he need to change who's calling the defense? Will he spend more time with the defense since that is his background? We'll hear cuts on that. We've also got some questions from the chat that we're going to get to. Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com. Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com continues with Vince D'Addario. I'm Sean Stiers. We're talking about Notre Dame's defensive performance in the loss to Texas A&M Saturday night, 41-40. We'll go ahead and play this. Marcus Freeman was asked after the game Saturday night if who's calling the defense needs to change.
No, it's not the call, it's the execution. And I've always believed that. I think sometimes calling things, I've been a play caller, at times can be overrated as much as it's the execution of that play call. And so that's what we got to evaluate. And we'll look and say we probably shouldn't have called this in that situation. Those are things you always look at. But at the end of the day, why aren't we able to execute in a way that we believe we need to and should? That's the question that we got to get answered.
So again, it comes back to the execution. He says, are they calling the right things? What do you think, Vince?
Well, they're not calling the right things because they're not calling the right things for, that are going to affect what offenses are doing to them, right? I mean, you look at the Miami game, a lot of their stuff was underneath, and Notre Dame is playing off man, or they're playing zone, and they're playing off to start with. You don't have to play off when you're playing zone. We talked about that. So they're not adjusting to what offenses are doing to them. They played a little bit more up, than they, this past Saturday than they did the previous Sunday. Yes. But there's a disconnect somewhere. That's the biggest issue. There's a disconnect. Yeah. So, there's the Jimmys and Joes and the X's and O's and all of those little cliches that you can talk about. We know that Notre Dame has good players. They did it last year. So we know that's not the problem. So where's the disconnect for what the coaches are seeing these players do and then calling certain things? It's got to be the calls.
The only new variable we have, because we've got the same secondary coach. We've got, Mike Mickens, who was offered a lot of money to go to a couple other places this offseason. You've got Marty Biaggi, who was helping him coach the safeties last year, and he is still there. So those two guys are still in place. We've got the same linebackers coach. We've got the same defensive line coach. The only new variable that's been added to the mix is the subtraction of Al Golden going to the Cincinnati Bengals and the addition of Chris Ash. And so, again, 3 of the 4 starters. Okay, yeah, there was another variable. You lose Xavier Watts, great player, obviously, made an interception, his first career interception for the Falcons yesterday. So, that's a variable. But again, you've got 3 of the 4 starters from the national championship game in the secondary back this year. You've got 3 of the 4 top linebackers who you had last year, who all played pretty well last year. Like, the only one that you lose is Jack Kaiser. So you've got another variable. But again, the only addition to this whole equation is the defensive coordinator, who is obviously in charge of the defense. So how does a defense that goes from playing elite level, national championship level, all of last year, most of the year before as well, after some growing pains in Golden's first season, how does it go to that to literally being one of the worst defenses in the country virtually overnight? The only variable you have is the defensive the only real variable you have is the defensive coordinator, because all these guys have played in the system. If the system hasn't changed, all these guys on the team, even guys who weren't playing as much last year, they've all played in the system. So theoretically, they should all know their job. They all executed their jobs pretty well last year. The biggest difference you have is at the top, the guy who's calling all the shots, asking them to play whatever coverage. And the coverages, again, they might have been in the playbook, the defensive playbook last year, but Notre Dame was not running those to the extreme that they are running them right now, if at all. So like you're talking about the off-man coverage, things like that.
There's a million things in a playbook, but that doesn't mean that's who you are as an identity, right? So let's talk about that, right? What is the identity of this team? What's the defensive identity of this team? It used to be last year, the year before, under Al Golden, aggressive, let the athletes play, all of those different things, right? That was the identity of the defense, and that is all completely gone right now. That's the biggest issue to me, is you strip this team of its identity, and so they're playing. Are they playing scared? Are they playing like they're thinking too much? What is exactly happening? Because they're not playing the way that they've played in the past. And again, it's not a bunch of new guys where it's like, well, they're just not as good as the guys they had before. It's not the case. A lot of these guys played in the national championship game. So that's a major, major problem for me. And as far as Marcus Freeman is concerned and the press conference that he gave today and all of these different things, it's like when you're a teacher, when you're a parent, right? You're going to get what you allow, right?
Yeah.
And right now, Marcus Freeman is allowing Chris Ash to coach this defense, and he's allowing him to call this defense. That's a problem, right?
I'll go ahead and play this. He was asked today, will he spend more time with the defense, considering that is his background?
I think more importantly, like as a head coach, it's as a leader, it's important to wear the hat that's necessary in that moment, no matter if it's offense, defense, special teams, recruiting, anything, right? It's being able to put on the hat that's necessary at this moment. I spend a lot of time with our defense. That's obviously where my background is, and I'll continuously do it. Will I spend more time? Maybe. If that's what's necessary, I will. I'll spend more time there. I'm going to do whatever it takes to make sure that we improve and we have a performance that we believe is the standard of Notre Dame football.
So he said, if I think that I need to, I will. I mean, I think that everyone, all of the casual observers, all the outside observers are saying, yeah, Marcus, you need to spend more time with the defense right now. Look, I told you this. I told Brian this at halftime of that game. I said, man, I realize we're only a game and a half into this, but if I'm Marcus Freeman, I would cut my losses right now and just take over the defense.
Absolutely.
The rest of the way. That's exactly what I would do.
And I'll be honest with you, Sean.
It got worse. I mean, it got a little bit better at times, but it's, to your point earlier, when they needed to make a stop, they couldn't make stops.
Right. Right. If I'm Marcus Freeman and I'm going to take away the play calling duties basically from Chris Ash, I'm not telling you in a press conference. You know what I mean? We're just going to do it behind closed doors. There's going to be a new distribution of duties, and this is how we're going to get things done moving forward. And I'm not saying that to the media because it's none of their dang business is how I would feel if I was the coach, right?
Nobody needs to know because even in 2016, after Kelly fired Brian Van Gorder, we didn't know who was actually calling.
We had no idea who was in charge.
You essentially had a figurehead as defensive coordinator standing on the sideline, but he wasn't really the one who was calling all the shots. And that's how it would, I would essentially have Mike Mickens constructing all the game plans in terms of who's calling what, with your coverage and all that kind of stuff, because we have seen that he is elite at his job, and I would have him in charge of that, and I would kind of work out from there. I don't think it needs to be a whole lot more complicated than that.
I agree. It does not need to be more complicated than that, but that would instill much more faith in Marcus Freeman if he makes a change. And we'll get an idea if that's the case, in the next game. But again, it's nobody else's business what they're doing behind the scenes.
Look, there was the question earlier in the chat that I had up there and I took it out accidentally about, are Miami and Texas A&M just better than we thought they were? I think to an extent Miami was. Marcel Reed completed 46% of his passes and threw for 360 yards. Marcus Freeman talked today. 6 explosive plays accounted for 200 yards in that game. 200 out of 488 yards. The quarterback completed 46% of his passes, Vince, and still threw for 388 yards.
Right. Big time problem.
Major issue. Major.
Right. Yeah, it's a huge issue. I know there's a cut in here. I don't know if we're going to get to it, but he mentioned that there were 6 plays.
I'll go ahead and play it right now. Because there's so much that I want to keep talking about. Again, we've got a short show today, and it's like, where do I go? So here it is. The 6 explosive plays. 200 of the 488 yards of Aggie offense came on 6 plays Saturday night.
As you look at the 6 big plays, it wasn't just one thing. When I talked about 6 plays in my opener that, contributed to 200 plus yards. We had eye discipline on one, technique, schematic execution. Can this person perform what we're asking him to do consistently? It was a couple different things that I believe were the issues. It wasn't just one thing, one person, but it was multiple different things. And that's a good and a bad thing, right? And so we have to fix it. We got to correct it, and we've identified it. We have a plan to get it corrected. Now we got to do it.
They've got a plan.
I'm glad they got a plan.
Get it executed. Yeah.
I mean, I'm glad he's got a plan, but I assumed he had a plan going into Miami and a plan going into Texas A&M too. So, I think we have to reevaluate what the plan is and the manner in which you get to that plan. I think that's the issue here.
All right. So Shamrocker with a super chat. Thank you very much. First Shamrocker. He says, see the previous two questions. Do you really think Notre Dame can go 10-2 with Ash as defensive coordinator? I don't think so. Have you heard that there are players complaining about him? So Shamrocker's other two questions. Please explain the press conference. He says Freeman's answer was a lie. I don't understand it. Is Freeman going to take over the defense or what? Role is he going to have? Also, it sounded like he was mostly blaming the players. What do you think?
I think we've kind of talked about that. I mean, saying execution 17 times is not great. You have to take some onus. And he did take onus on himself, but not on any of the assistant coaches. So that's a bit of an issue. I mean, he didn't have to call anybody out or anything like that's not necessary. But I don't think he said enough that we're not doing a good job at coaching. I don't think that was enough. Like the boilerplate, we got to coach better. Like that gets annoying, and that got really annoying with the last guy that was here. But I would say taking some onus as coaches would have been a better sounding press conference and maybe a little bit less about execution.
Yeah, it feels like, with repeating the execution, again, well, it's the execution of it. Well, who has to execute it? The players have to execute it. Now, the coaches have to prepare them during the week to be able to execute it. But you just go back to, it didn't seem like it was rocket science the last couple of years when there was a defensive coordinator. These guys were executing at a very high level. So again, why is it all of a sudden they're not able to do some of the basic stuff that we've seen them do so many times before? Because when you watch them, whether it's lining up or trying to communicate before and during some of these plays, it seems like there's a lot less of that. Again, even though if they're really running the Notre Dame defense and not Chris Ash's defense, all of these guys, none of these are true freshmen who are out there playing. They're all guys who have been here at Notre Dame for at least two, right? And in most cases, more years than that. And here's what they rank right now, according to the NCAA. Total defense, 108th. Pass efficiency defense, 103rd. They were number one in the nation in pass efficiency defense last year. Tackles for loss, 106th. Sacks, 131st, because they're not getting pass rush home. Scoring defense, 117th, more than double what they were giving up last year. Passing yards allowed, 124th, and rushing defense, 77th. And again, it's do you have to give credit to Miami and Texas A&M? Of course. They've got some good players. I still think Miami's offense, especially the way they're structured with the offensive line and then their defensive line as well, I think both lines of scrimmage, Miami was better than Texas A&M. Texas A&M's were okay, but I really have a hard time even figuring out why Notre Dame is not able to get any pressure home. But again, that is different. The way Chris Ash goes about it is much different than Al Golden. I realize not everyone's going to blitz as much as Al Golden and disguise blitzes the way Al Golden does. But when you're talking about getting pressure home, you're talking about two completely different philosophies with what Chris Ash wants to do compared to what Al Golden wanted to do.
I completely agree. And they were blitzing and they weren't getting home.
Yeah.
Because they were not those blitzes were not executed
They're
very,
more
very
basic
well.
blitzes. Yeah.
Very basic. Like we're talking middle school type blitzes. I mean, they ran right into offensive linemen. Like there was no like the lack of twisting, lack of a lot of things. But the blitzing was not effective. I'll just say that. And obviously they were not getting home with 4. And when you don't get home with 4, that's a major problem. So yeah. So the problems are so layered. There are so many of them that I just don't know how they get it fixed in a week. I just don't, because they didn't get anything fixed in the 2 weeks that they were off.
Right.
No, nothing. They might have been worse, actually, in the second game than they were in the first game. So whatever they did to fix it after the first game, it didn't work. So I would love to know what the plan is. But again, Marcus Freeman doesn't have to tell us what the plan is. Like fans and media, you are not entitled to anything.
Change it. Do whatever you want behind the scenes.
Correct.
But you got to get better at something here pretty quickly, or this season can get away from you very fast.
Right.
It's teetering on getting away right now. And if
Agreed.
something doesn't change, it can. Because again, all you need is one decent quarterback and a couple good receivers, and any game is going to be in question for the rest of the year, the way the defense played Saturday night. That's just
yes, absolutely. 100%. 100%. It gets on my nerves when fans are like, we deserve answers. You don't deserve anything. What? I pay for my kid to go to college, and I'm not calling up the head coach and asking him why they lost this past weekend and what the changes are going to be.
Right.
Like, I literally pay for him to be there. He doesn't owe me anything. He doesn't owe me a response. And so fans certainly don't get owed a response. Sorry.
You might be treading in troubled waters there, Vince, by saying that. We'll take our final timeout, and then we'll be back to wrap up this short edition of the show. Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com. Winding down this quick hour of Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com with Vince D'Addario. I'm Sean Stiers, a very spirited live YouTube chat tonight. Don't forget, you can watch the show always live on the Irish Breakdown YouTube channel as well as the Sports Radio WSBT YouTube channel. We're done early tonight because we've got Monday Night Football coming up at 6 o'clock here this evening. And I think I've been here for less than 2 months, so I don't want to lose my job by by saying, no, we're just going to keep going. Forget Monday Night Football. So we got Westwood One coverage coming up here in a little bit. Let's do some of these super chats, and we appreciate all the super chats. I wish I was a domer. Thanks for asking the whose defense is it question today at the press conference. Josh Stansberry just throwing some money in there. Appreciate you, Josh, for doing that. Andy Milton fan says, did the horrible defensive performance drown out the fact that Knapp is still at left tackle? Also, another subpar O-line performance. I did think the offensive line was better. Still not great. There was improvement, though. And this is kind of how I look at it, Vince. And maybe you can apply this to the defense to some extent, although I'll stick by what I said. You got a decent quarterback and a couple receivers. I think that's going to be trouble for Notre Dame secondary the way they are playing right now and the way they are not getting any pressure home. Just by the level of competition that you face the rest of the way, it's a little bit of an optical illusion, but things will start to look better just because the level of competition that you're going to see is different.
100%. 100%. And the offensive line played better than they did in the first game. They did. There were still issues, no doubt about it. But, Knapp's a block on the Price touchdown, I believe, where he took the guy basically into the end zone. Like, that's a pretty good block.
Yeah.
And so, it's not awful, but it's not great either, and it was overshadowed by the play of the defense because Notre Dame scored 33 offensive points, and so some things go away at that point.
Circa, thank you for that little super sticker that you threw in there. Appreciate that. The 80s guy in the YouTube chat. Vince, how long of a leash would you give Ash if you were the head coach?
I mean, I'm not firing him. I would not fire him in the middle of the season. I don't think that does it solve things? Sure. But at the same time, it doesn't solve things, but I would reorganize the responsibilities behind the scenes. I would absolutely do that. And I'd be doing that this week. That's
absolutely.
The leash is now gone. There is no leash anymore.
You still, even after losing 2 games, you've lost to what are supposed to be the 2 best teams on your schedule. But again, USC is scoring. They can throw the ball around. They can make things difficult for you. You're still, mathematically, you are not out of the college football playoff picture.
No, you're not.
There is the whole thing that people started pointing out right away. Well, Notre Dame not being in a conference. See, this is why you need to be in a conference. You lose these games and blah, 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 and now you don't have it. Notre Dame will still be in the picture if they are able to run the table to 10-2, but that's 10 consecutive wins for a second year in a row where your back is against the wall and you've got to do that. It is all do or die the rest of the way.
And I'm not having a conversation about, if they go 10-2, they'll make the play. That's not the conversation to have right now. You got to beat Purdue. You know what I mean? That's the conversation. You got to beat Purdue. Then you got to beat Arkansas. It's one game at a time. I said the same thing after the Northern Illinois game. You've got to win each game. You got to let the rest of it take care of itself. It's time to hunker down, be insular, and you've got to just win each game each week. That's what needs to happen. And as far as Ash is concerned, somebody said it in the chat way at the beginning of the show. You take away the responsibilities, and then he just kind of quietly goes away at the end of the year. He's not going to get quote unquote fired. Notre Dame is famous for this, where they go and they find guys jobs, and then they go and take those jobs. You know what I mean? It's not just a flat out firing. It's not really something Notre Dame does. They can, but they usually don't. And so I do believe that will be the issue, because guys that have been flat out fired have been mentally or physically like abusive to the players. Like there's been bigger issues than just not being a good coach.
Allegedly.
Right. There's I shouldn't say physically, because that's not the case.
Yeah.
Mentally, that kind of thing. It is if you're just a bad coach, you just kind of disappear. You know what I mean? So I think that's what will happen at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, where we sit right now, like, and we'll get more into the offense tomorrow as well when we do our Shamrock up, Shamrock down, and we check some of the stock and stuff. Because there were some guys, I think, on offense whose stock went up. Like overall, there were some guys who had a stock rise in the game. There were also some guys who had their stock dip quite a bit, coaches and players alike. But the poor performance of the defense completely overshadows the fact that, like, just as an example, for the second week in a row, when you needed a touchdown drive, a redshirt freshman in his second career start led you on a touchdown drive when you had to get there.
But people are saying
it's completely overshadowed because of the fact that you gave up 41 points.
Yeah. And that's a shame. Because the kid's playing some pretty darn good football. He makes freshman mistakes, like the clap walking off the field, because he was frustrated, and the interception was bad. He tried to make a play, threw it too high. That's a bad play. You don't do that. But man, the plays he is making are really, really good.
Yeah.
They're really, really good. And he is the most unfazed Notre Dame quarterback that I have seen in a very, very long time. He's just out there going through his reads and snapping the ball off, and
knows what he's doing.
The pocket's collapsing around him. No big deal. He's just there doing his thing.
Right.
So that's a huge positive.
Yeah. I mean, think how much worse that game was if you don't have CJ Carr playing at the level that he's playing at.
100%. 100%. And you're seeing the offense do. And if that continues, then maybe it will be 65-64 in some of these games. You know what I mean? Like that's
the thing. You don't, like, all you really need is a defense that can hold teams to around 20 points a game. 3 touchdowns. Like
that's it.
That's it. Like, it doesn't have to be 15 points a game like the last 2 years. All you need is a viable defense that can hold teams to 3 touchdowns a game, and you're gonna win pretty much every game you play the rest of the way. That's all you've got to do. But doing that is almost cutting the scoring defense in half, just where they stand through 2 games right now. Now, again, the competition they're going to play these next 10 games is not theoretically going to be what they've just faced, but there are a couple teams out there like USC and NC State just off the top of the list, and people are saying Arkansas as well. But I would still put, because of who they are offensively, I would put USC and NC State above them. They can make things difficult from you, and they could give you a game and make it look exactly like it looked the other night. That's, you're both in the 40s. It's like whack after dark out there. Real quick, Vince. We got.
I would just say there's no defense left on the schedule that worries me. There's plenty of offenses that worry me. I'll just say that.
Yes, exactly. That's our show for today. We'll be back tomorrow. We'll talk a lot of offense. We'll get into some whiteboard with some of this defensive stuff as well. We'll have a full rapid fire and the whole thing tomorrow. Vince, I will talk to you, I guess, in a couple of days.
Yes, I think that's accurate.
We'll talk to you tomorrow. But otherwise, there's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com.